So we're going to call this meeting to order. As a reminder, if you would like to speak before the council tonight, please complete a blue speaker request form and give it to the clerk prior to the item. Let's do roll call.
Councilmember Plott.
Here.
Councilmember Rigby.
Here.
Councilmember Rush.
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Lorimore.
Here.
Mayor Tessari will be marked absent.
So tonight's invocation will be presented by Pastor Tim Eaton of Edgewater Lutheran, to be followed by the Pledge of Allegiance, led by Councilmember Plott.
Mayor Pro Tem, esteemed member of our City Council, and fellow citizens, would you join me in bowing our heads? Gracious God, we give thanks to you for the many wonderful gifts that you continue to keep and bless upon our city of Eastville. Like the wise King Solomon before us, when we pray, following after his example, as he prayed for himself, he said that, Lord, that you would endow the king with justice, that you would give him righteousness as he judged amongst your people. He prayed also for those whom he led, that you would give them prosperity, and also for the very ground on which they live, that you would give it fruitfulness. When we pray the same for our city, we pray that we continue to bless our city council with wisdom and discretion as they lead us. We pray for the fellow members of our city, Lord, that you would continue to bless us with prosperity as we see continued growth both in numbers and in businesses. Lord, we pray that you would bless them with prosperity as well. We thank you for the incredible diversity and the wonderful peace which we enjoy in our city. We pray that we continue to be a model for others of how to live together in joy. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Pastor Eaton. Okay, Councilmember Plott, if everybody please stand.
Put your right hand over your heart.
Ready, begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, so we're going to be moving to presentations and announcements. At this time, I would like to invite Lisa Eccles to the speaker's podium. Is Ms. Eccles here? Believe so. All right, Ms. Eccles is a senior peer support special for, I hope I'm reading this right. Ms. Eccles is a senior peer support specialist, I believe, for Riverside University Health System, who will be accepting the Mental Health Month proclamation. Welcome, Ms. Eccles. Yes, please. Thank you.
I'm a senior parent partner with Riverside University. Our name just changed at the beginning. Riverside University Behavioral Health. And we would like to thank you and the city of Eastvale for participating in our Mental Health Month event. And I would like to share with you that the proclamation will be on display at our event on the 25th of May. I brought flyers and would like to invite everybody to this. It's a family event for wellness and resource fair. There's activities for children, free health screenings, community information, information on mental health, entertainment, substance abuse information, and special recognition. So I'd like to thank you and invite all of you.
All right. Well, thank you. We're going to join you right down here to take a picture and present you with this proclamation. All right, we're going to read through this proclamation. We have a lot of whereases, so I'm going to skip through some of them, but I'm going to read the important ones. Okay, so moving on to item 3.1, we just completed that with the proclamation. Item 3.2 is the introduction of Eastvale's new WR COG Fellow, Marianne Malika. Ms. Neeson.
Good evening, council members, residents, and staff. It is with great pleasure that I'd like to introduce Marianne Maleki to the city of Eastvale.
Apologize.
I wrote it out phonetically so that I would pronounce it correctly. Marianne is going to be our next fellow from Western Riverside Council of Governments. And we're very excited to have her join us. And we have great hopes for everything that she will accomplish for the city of Eastvale. And I'd like to give you a little bit about her background and brag on her a little bit. So Marianne is a master's student at UCR School of Public Policy, and she's graduating in June. So she is working on her master's thesis right now, so she won't be full steam ahead until June. She's originally from Los Angeles, and she moved to the Inland Empire about 6 years ago. She loved it so much here, she decided to make it her home and has been involved in the community ever since. She sits on Mayor Bailey's Innovation District Committee. And for those residents that don't know, Mayor Bailey is for the city of Riverside. She has also been involved in the Riverside Unified School District board member Patricia Locke-Dawson's Santa Ana River Committee. She's a graduate research student for UCR School of Public Policy and a health educator for the Riverside County Public Health Department. Marianne is currently working on two major projects, one of which I mentioned is her master's thesis, which is to evaluate WRCOG's regional streetlight program. And she's also working on a grant writing project for Riverside County Economic Development Agency that will potentially bring hundreds of millions of dollars to the region for economic development. While she has never been involved with the city of Eastvale in a professional capacity, Marianne is a frequent visitor to the city. She attended every high school play at Eleanor Roosevelt High School, where her husband's cousin performs, and you can find her at the Eastvale Shopping Center on any given weekend. Go Eastvale. She is excited and thankful to be starting a fellowship and is looking forward to working with all of us.
That is awesome.
So we're very excited to have you on board. And with that, if there's any words you'd like to say.
Thank you for having me, and I'm so excited to be a part of Eastvale.
Welcome.
Welcome. We're
Thank you for being
excited
here.
too. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I would like, it's not part of our program, but I'd like to grab a picture of you so we can have a before and after picture. Is that okay?
Yeah.
All right, let's do it, guys. All right, we're going to be moving on to item number 4, the student liaison report. Natalie Diaz.
Thank you. Okay, so Eastvale schools on the traditional school year schedule are coming to a close end of the school year, and the last day for them will be Friday, June 2nd. And Claire Barton Elementary School has an upcoming Relay for Life event that will be taking place next Saturday, May 20th. And the principals are excited to announce that if the schools reach their goal of $5,000, then they'll dye their hair purple in honor of the cause. And also, they're reaching the end of the school year, and their 6th grade promotion will be taking place on Friday, May 26th. River Heights Intermediate School is also approaching summer quickly, and they're proud to announce that their Gold Ribbon School Celebration will be taking place this Friday, May 12th, from 5 p.m. to 7 p.m. And the school has successfully completed the California Gold Ribbon Schools program application process and is being recognized as one of the 275 California Gold Ribbon Schools of the Year for 2017 in California. And the community is welcome to come out and celebrate their achievement this Friday from 5 to 7. And Eleanor Roosevelt High School is coming up to the end of the school year too. This Thursday, so tomorrow, May 11th at 4 p.m., varsity and JV softball will be having a home game against Norco. And also next week, they'll be hosting What If Week. Monday will be What If We Spread Kindness. Tuesday will be What If We Work Together. Wednesday will be What If We Honored Our Heroes. Thursday will be What If We Faced Our Fears. And finally, Friday will be What If We Were Kids Again. And also, senior graduation will be taking place Friday, June 2nd at 7 p.m. in the football field. And this Friday, May 12th at 7 p.m., the ERHS choirs will be having their last concert of the year. And tickets are $10, and they can be purchased online at erhs.booktix.com or at the door. And the community is encouraged to come out and support their last concert. Yeah. That's all. Any questions?
Any questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for the report.
All right, at this time, we're going to turn to public comments. Any members of the public may address the council on items within the council's subject matter jurisdiction, but which are not listed on the agenda during public comments. However, no action may be taken on matters that are not part of the posted agenda. We request comments made on the agenda be made at the time the item is considered, and that comments be limited to 2 minutes per person. Please address your comments to the council as a whole and do not engage in dialogue with individual council members, city staff, or members of the audience. Mr. Aguilar, has anyone submitted a request to speak?
Yes, Mayor Pro Tem. We have quite a few speakers tonight. The first one is Ray Hernandez.
Are they related to items on the agenda or?
No, this is for public
Okay,
comment.
excellent, excellent. Mr. Hernandez.
Good evening, City Council, staff, and members of the audience. Surprise, my commentary tonight will not be mailbox crime. However, my subject matter is public commentary time limits. I conducted a survey of over 30 surrounding cities regarding public communication time limits. What I learned are the following. I will give you a sample of 17 since I have only 2 minutes of time to present this. 5 minutes for the following cities: Diamond Bar, Rancho Cucamonga, West Covina, Montana, Yorba Linda. 3 minutes for the following cities: Chino Hills, Riverside, Pomona, Ontario, Walnut, Anaheim, Harbor, Eureka Valley, San Dimas, with Claremont with 4 minutes. Of 30 city surveyed, not one had a 2-minute limit. So I asked this council, why do you find it necessary to limit Eastville residents 2 minutes? When residents feel they are being ignored instead of having their concerns addressed in a legitimate time fashion, communication will continue to weaken and solutions will become more difficult to achieve. Currently, only 2 minutes with a maximum of 6-minute cap is policy. Other cities have a 30-minute cap. In my view, the 2-minute time frame discourages public involvement, reduces transparency, and gives the perception you're not interested in the residents, in what they have to say. The average is 3 minutes. Frankly, we need to do better. I urge this council to agendize this issue for future consideration so all council members can express their views, vote to increase the time, and establish a public record on this issue. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Our second public comment card was received from Justin D. Whale.
Pro Tem council members, Justin from Assembly Member Sabrina Cervantes' office, just here to been signed into law by the governor, and that bill includes $14.6 billion of transportation funding for the city of Eastvale over a 10-year period. And SB 130, the bill which includes back funding for VLF revenue, has passed through the legislature, and that will be signed by the governor very soon. Our bill, the Assembly Members Bill 361, which would allow employers to apply for a $1,000 tax cut for hiring a registered apprentice, passed in the Assembly Revenue and Taxation Committee. Her bill AB 296, which would create a task force on women's veterans' health, passed unanimously in the Veterans Affairs Committee. And her bill 226, which would expedite the process of teacher credentialing for spouses of U.S. military service members, passed on the Assembly floor. And that's moving to the Senate. Those are just a few of the bills we're working on. Thank you.
Mr. Doyle, thank you for coming out tonight. Do you have an update on AB 91?
AB 91?
Yeah, I don't know if you're not prepared to speak on it, if you could come back next time and talk about that, it'd be appreciated.
Yeah, I apologize. I don't at
Okay.
this moment. I'd be happy to get in touch with you, find out and get in touch with you as soon as possible.
Excellent, thank you.
Thanks.
Appreciate you coming out tonight.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Don Pettinger.
I heard my timer start, so I better start talking. You know, it said if you don't know where you are, you can't get where you're going. And a lot of things people preach that Dave Ramsey does in budgeting. If you don't know where your current budget is, you don't know how to get to where you're going. D. Wayne Calloway, the old CEO of PepsiCo, also talked about that in setting goals. That brings me to the point, as a public, we can't help with crime if we don't know what the current stats are. And we can't ask the council to add additional budgeting for our sheriff's department if we don't know if crime is on the increase or if crime is on the decrease. And what I'm asking for is the council to direct staff to talk to the Executive Sheriff's Committee about releasing consistent, accountable stats on a monthly basis so that we're able to compare year after year, month after month, to see if crime rates are going up or going down in our city. All of our surrounding agencies offer the same, whether it be LASO or LAPD, and even the smaller agencies offer similar type of stat reports. All that you have to do as a council member or a citizen is call in and get them. The Sheriff's Department, as well as LAPD, offer monthly stat reports on their websites that are always available. So I'm asking that you direct that they do this for us to help us out in being able to address crime in appropriate ways when we start our neighborhood watch meetings. Another concern that I have is the Sheriff's Department not being willing to provide information to people on the Public Safety Commission. I'm working on a program to start a neighborhood watch or restart neighborhood watch, and one of our public safety commissioners called the Sheriff's Department, wanted to get something basic as what the areas were for the current neighborhood watch programs, along with who the leads were, and she was told that that's confidential information above her pay grade, that they can't give it to her. I'm just thinking that if we have a public safety commission, things like that should be able to be provided freely to them so that we're able to take care of starting valuable programs like this in our community. So I would urge staff to, or the council to urge staff to talk to the executive committee as well as write it into the next contract that is required. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
I have a comment on that. Thank you, Mr. Pettinger, for being here. Just kind of a quick follow-up on that. I did meet with our chief, Chief Hedge, recently, and we talked specifically about statistics and information there. There are some tools that are available on the sheriff's website that give us a glimpse of statistics. I would agree that I think we need to have more regular statistics. That was one thing that I talked to Chief Hedge briefly about. After talking with him about this specific topic, it was my understanding that that is not an issue that he's able to release, or that he's able to make a decision on. That I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Chief Hedge, but it's basically the executive, it's basically the chief's, or I'm sorry, the sheriff's office. I do think it's crucial for us to have those statistics in twofold. One, for us, as we come up upon contract renewal, we need to know, especially this year and future years, we need to know what we need to do with staffing levels, as well as it is absolutely right. I feel as a resident that it's important for us to know where our statistics and crime are at. I guess a follow-up to that is, I think if it's not something, Chief Hedge, that you can provide us, maybe if you can give us direction on what we need to do to get that information. If it is that we need to meet with the sheriff's office, or what we need to do.
Yeah, if I may, the official statistics, which are released by the actual sheriff's office, can be requested, and then they go through the process for release. So that can be made at any time. When it comes to unofficial statistics, we can work with the city upon the city's request and provide them whatever information they need. However, our only concern is that there will be potential for some discrepancy, because the official statistics that are released from the sheriff's department may somehow be different than our statistics, because our statistics are subject to change. As an example, somebody reports a crime, and then later on it's determined to be unfounded. Because ours are released so quickly, we might not stat that properly. So there could be some changes. However, our working statistics can be released to the city upon their request.
Is that a possibility, maybe city attorney or even city manager, for us to have those statistics, and maybe even from the chief, is it a possibility to have those regularly put onto our website so they're easily available to our residents?
The statistics I'm discussing are not for public release. Public release statistics are released by the sheriff's department. However, as working numbers, we can sit down with the city and provide them whatever they need when it comes to working on the budget and that type of issues. However, for publication, that would have to come from the sheriff's department.
Is there a way that we can possibly talk with the sheriff's executive team to see what we can do to get that accessible to our residents? Because I strongly feel, I think it was something that, as Mr. Pettinger mentioned, LAPD does it on a monthly basis for all 21 divisions that they have. The sheriff's department does it regularly, or the LA Sheriff's Department does it regularly. And I just think it's something that should be given to our residents.
Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, I think at this point, I think this is a discussion item that we probably should be placed on another agenda to talk about, because we're going to have to need a consensus or some decision on whether we go that direction. So
Absolutely.
if Councilmember Rigby during the time wants to request it to put on the agenda, you can do so.
Yes, I would like this to be put on the agenda to discuss the possibility of having statistics provided on a regular basis to our residents.
Okay. Councilmember Plott?
Just real quick too, I think also the thing to look at too is kind of the second point that Mr. Pettinger brought up, was to allow public safety. It really should be presented in the public safety forum, and that if public safety commissioners are asking that question, that that should be released to them in that form as well. They're public safety commissioners, right? And so I think that's absolutely relevant to what they're going for. So just want to concur with Councilman Rubio. What he said is exactly something that we need to strive for.
Mr. Kavanaugh, do we need to make a motion on?
No, just a consensus,
okay.
Mr. Mayor Pro Tem.
Is there a consensus, gentlemen?
Yes.
Yes, okay, there is
Thank you.
consensus. Do we have any more public comments?
Yes, our last public comment card is from Brian Nichols.
Good evening, Mr. Nichols. Good.
Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem, City Council members, and members of the public. I live in the Heartland community, specifically on Peach Blossom Street. Come here today to express my concerns about how fast cars are driving up and down our street. First, I want to start off by thanking Councilmember Plott for listening to our concerns and stepping up and trying to seek a solution for us. Peach Blossom is a very interesting street because it hits a major street on both ends of the street, either 65th or Scholar, depending on which direction you're driving on. There is one stop sign down our street. Specifically, a couple nights ago, we had somebody at 3 a.m. drive back and forth about 70 miles an hour down our street. We have kids that have almost been hit. We have dogs that have been run over. I had a car totaled in my front yard, along with all my trash cans. We've had cars drive up on the sidewalks. We've had kids almost get hit on a regular basis. It's a pretty big deal for us on that part of the street. Specifically where we live, we have 9 houses that are on both sides of the street. The rest of Peach Blossom only has houses on one side of the street. You'll notice on the street, there's people all throughout the neighborhood that have signs up saying that kids are playing. We have cones in the street, signs for kids. People park their cars. We park our cars strategically to make it so it's narrower for the street so that cars aren't speeding down the street. I thank you for putting up the radar detectors, but I fear that the issue is that people are seeing them now, and then as soon as they drive past it, they're speeding up again, thinking that they're not going to get in trouble. Something needs to be done about the street, whether it's speed bumps or dips or whatever else. So, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Make one brief comment. Make one brief
Yeah,
comment.
go for it.
I'm going to, on the city council communications, the last part of today's meeting, I'll kind of go into more detail, but really the thanks needs to go to Joe Indrawan, was on it and was able to put those trailer speed radar systems up there. So thank you, Joe, you and your staff. But yeah, I'll kind of talk about it more further discussion later tonight.
Okay.
So.
Anything else? Okay, that concludes our public comments. We're going to be moving on to the consent calendar, items 6.1 through 6.4. All matters on the consent calendar are considered routine and are to be approved with one motion unless a council member, staff member, or member of the public requests separate action on a specific item. Mr. Aguilar, do we have any staff members that have requested to pull an item?
We have none.
As a public?
We have none.
Gentlemen.
So move.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Mr. Aguilar?
Councilmember Platt?
Yes.
Councilmember Rigby?
Aye.
Councilmember Rush?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Larmar?
Aye.
Motion passes 4-0.
Okay, we are moving right along. Now we are on to public hearings. Items 7.1 and 7.2. We will take these separately. We have 2 public hearing items. Mr. Norris, would you please present item 7.1?
Yes, sir. Got the mic up here. Yeah, item 7.1 is a project that's been to you before, so I'll give a fairly brief presentation, but hopefully cover all the valid points here. This is a general plan amendment and a change of zone. Project numbers are up on the screen there. And this is for what we call the Van Leeuwen property. This is the home of the Van Leeuwen family, Bill Van Leeuwen, one of our former planning commissioners. So we're looking here, this is Citrus. Here's Eleanor Roosevelt High School. Scholar Way comes along the western edge of the project here, and this is Community Park, the first phase. Second phase of Community Park is going to go down here. So Mr. Van Leeuwen approached the city a little over a year ago with a request to amend the general plan. And just by way of a little bit of background, you may recall that the history of this project goes back to just prior to incorporation, when the County of Riverside approved Mr. Van Leeuwen's original general plan request, which was to put his property in the high-density residential density category, which is between 8.1 and 14 units per acre. The reason we're here before you is because the maps that we received from the county upon incorporation hadn't been updated to include that change. And we weren't aware of that, frankly, until sometime in 2015, when it was brought to our attention that the county had approved this. By that time, we had already adopted the new Eastvale General Plan, which effectively wiped out whatever the county had done. So we're back again with Mr. Van Leeuwen making this request. Now, as you recall, this has been to you once before, and the discussion at that time really focused on the increase in density and some of the impacts that were going to come from that. Since then, we've met with Mr. Van Leeuwen. He's revised his request to go up one category in density, so from medium to medium high, but then not all the way to high. And we have a little comparison here. So what's before you now, and this has been to your planning commission, which recommended approval of this. So Mr. Van Leeuwen's current density over the acreage that he has results in about 79 homes being able to be built on his property at the max. He had originally come in and requested, and again, this is what the county had approved, to go up to the high-density category, which would have allowed him 221 units. He's now revised his request to go to a slightly higher density, but not what he had originally requested. And his current request adds 47 homes to the number that could be built, assuming, again, that we go to the very highest end of the density range. I think throughout the project there have been two major issues that have come up. One of those is traffic. And as we detail in the staff report, with the revised request and some questions that came up from the council and the planning commission, we went back to the traffic consultant that we've been working with that provided us with information on what the effects of adding homes to this site would do to the ultimate roadways. And their conclusion, two things. One is when they originally looked at it with that highest, with the potential for 221 homes, their conclusion was that when the roadways are improved to their full width, which they are not now, even assuming future increases in traffic, that adding these homes would not significantly affect the traffic. There's enough traffic on the road that this is adding some, but it's not making a huge contribution. It wouldn't cause new congestion. The other thing that we asked him about in this most recent go-around was whether the STEM Academy numbers were in there, because that was another question that came up. Well, STEM Academy is coming online, more students there. Is that going to affect traffic in the future? And we got a traffic study from the school district that they had done for the STEM Academy. Our traffic consultant looked at those numbers and again concluded that even adding that traffic in is not going to significantly change things in the future. So this graphic and the next one show a couple of other things that we pointed out to the commission. If you've been out there, and I'm sure most of you have, you know that Citrus Avenue currently necks down along the frontage of Mr. Van Loon's property and along a slight piece of the frontage of the first phase of Community Park. So when you're looking at traffic out there today, you're looking at traffic on a road that is not fully improved. So the numbers that we're talking about assume that the roads are fully improved. And that's one thing that changing the general plan and density we expect is going to facilitate the development of this site, which then will result in the widening of Citrus and the improvement of the frontage of Scholar along the project here. The other thing that's happening in terms of local roadway improvements, it's a little hard to see here, but there are two new signals that we put in by the STEM Academy at 68th and Baltimore Streets. That's going to help traffic move better on Scholar Way. So there are some things that are happening, this is happening between now and next year, and the improvements of the frontage will happen when this project comes in. So when you're thinking about ultimate traffic, remember to think in terms of the ultimate roadway system with more traffic signals and more capacity in Citrus. The other issue that came up during the hearings on the prior proposal was school capacity, and we had some questions about, will adding more homes here cause problems with capacity in the schools? We've checked with the school district. They don't have any problems with this. They'll be paid the school fees when the homes are built, and they didn't foresee that this was going to cause any impacts to school capacity. So we have prepared a negative declaration, basically saying that approving this would not cause any impacts. So traffic, schools, and all the other things that we looked at wouldn't be negatively affected by the approval. We have our CEQA lead tonight. Christine Donahue is in the audience, so if you have any specific CEQA questions, she can answer those for you. As I mentioned, the commission looked at this last month. They voted 4-1 to recommend to you that you approve the current request, which is to go to the medium high density general plan category and apply an R3 zoning, which matches that general plan density. So you have options. We always like to make sure that you're aware of those. You can accept the recommendation of the Planning Commission and approve both of the items. You could approve the general plan amendment and postpone the change of zone to a later time if you wanted to do that, or you could deny both of those. This is basically a policy call on the part of the council, so the question to you is whether you think this is the correct land use policy, the correct future land use on that property. Again, your commission recommended that. In our staff report, we highlighted from our earlier staff work some reasons why staff felt that this was an appropriate density there. And with that, I will end my presentation. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Anybody have any questions at this time?
Do you have any public comments?
Yes, we received one public comment card from Bill Van Leeuwen.
Take that first.
Yeah. Mr. Van Leeuwen.
I'm Bill Van Leeuwen. I reside at 13,000 Citrus Street. I am the owner of the property, and my wife and I are the owners of the property. That's in question. The city has, when it incorporated, found out that it was not yet some of the money that was due them from the government. And they fought diligently and sounds like successfully to redo that. I'm in a somewhat same situation. Something that was rightfully ours was somehow slipped through the cracks, and we now do not have it. And while we do not, all we're trying to do is to right something that was already there. We have no intention of going anywhere, but we do like to dream and see what we're going to do with the property eventually. And right now, there's no sense talking. So we would really like to have you approve this so that we can move forward and start thinking about what our future might be. We don't know how much future we have, but we would certainly like to dream a little bit. And I guess that's about all I have to say, unless there's some questions.
Thank you very much for working with the city on this. Appreciate it, sir. Okay, any questions?
I have a couple questions.
Okay.
So on this project, is there a proposed plan right now at all? Or is it just strictly changing zoning and general plan?
This is just general plan and zoning at this time. As Mr. Van Leeuwen said, they haven't sold the property, they don't have a buyer, so we would wait until someone came in with a proposal for the specifics on what gets put there.
So this is, I guess, just a because kind of thing to do?
It's a request that we received, so yeah.
Okay. With the, if this was, if this was approved, how is traffic going to exit that neighborhood?
Well, the specifics about that are something that we would figure out when we had a detailed proposal in front of us. Most likely, they'll have two ways in and out of the project, one on Scholar Way and one onto Citrus Street. Probably down toward the eastern end of it to get it as far away from the intersection as possible.
Okay.
So, and that one would probably be a right in, right out. So we're not having people turning left across Citrus out of the property. But that's a kind of detailed thing that we'll get into when we have a project in front of us. And you folks don't see as many of these development proposals, but if you go to the Planning Commission meetings, you'll know that we typically get a very detailed traffic analysis of turning movements and driveway locations and widths and all that kind of stuff when we have that level of a proposal. But we just don't have that right now, so we don't have that for you.
Okay.
Any other questions at this time?
Yeah, that made me think of something. From a technical perspective, you mentioned that a negative declaration was prepared for this. Is it the intention that the future project would be covered under that, or would the future project have to proceed on its own environmental path potentially?
We would probably make it go on its own path. Yeah, once we have the specifics.
You know, my concerns, I mean, this is one of the most congested areas of the city. Probably bad planning on the county's part, you know, originally, and I think the concept of putting three schools in line with each other with the operational standards that were in place at the time, wasn't a horrible idea, but the busing has gone away and alternating start times and all that, and then we add in the community park. I think from anecdotally, this is primarily one of the most complaint-driven areas of traffic that I personally receive on a weekly basis. And it's not even my district. But hey, it doesn't matter to me. Putting this many houses in this specific location is a concern of mine. And I think it's one of those things where everything looks good on paper, but doesn't always follow operationally wise and how people drive. I mean, if I go this way, it literally takes me 20 minutes to get out of the city during school start times. And I feel for the residents over there. I mean, it is a lot of traffic at very specific times of the day, so. I do have some concerns. I would, I think in the future when we do these, I know this is a unique situation, ask for a development plan along with it. But I know that didn't, happen at this point, so. It's my 2 cents anyways.
Mr. Platt? Thank you. Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. In regards to the Corona Norco Unified School District, when they indicated that there would be any impacts on school capacity, is that, do they look at that as the district as a whole, or they look at it specifically the schools in Eastville? Because I think that could be very misconstrued, that stat. So I wanted to know if we have an answer on that kind of specifically.
I don't think I can answer that for you. I think they tend to look at their district as a whole rather than segregating our schools. I know one of the people who came to one of the earlier planning commission meetings was telling a story about her 2 children who ended up in 2 different schools. They're in different grades, different academic needs, and so on. And so there's definitely that concern out there, but I don't think I can't answer your question specifically.
I think it'd be good to know that answer. So if they're looking as a whole, then I think we need to really specify and hone in what the effects are within our schools in that district.
Yeah.
Councilman Rigby, you're on the Eastville Schools Committee. I mean, has this kind of been brought up at all, or?
So I was actually just going to respond to that a little bit. I actually requested, unfortunately for tomorrow's school meeting, to ask for a more specific detail regarding because my understanding is when they do these reports, they look at the entire district, and they look at, for instance, our school district is fairly large, so that when we ask them what are the school's capacity, they look at the entire district, meaning there may be room in a school in South Corona, which from a school district standpoint, they may say, hey, we may have to bus the kids from Eastville down to South Corona. So what I requested was tomorrow for them to give a more specific, during our meeting, to give a more specific occupancy, I guess, attendance record as to our school specifically in Eastville and where we're at capacity-wise. So, I mean, I don't know that it does much good now, today, but it will be presented tomorrow.
Yeah, I think it's fair to understand that, most of the schools are, like the staff report says, at or near capacity. And, from what I've heard, I think Roosevelt is pretty much there. Now, I don't think it's fair necessarily to apply that to any project. I mean, because with what Mr. Van Leeuwen said, I mean, the property may sell in a year, it may sell in 10 years, and, people graduate. Hopefully everyone graduates and moves out. So there's, life cycle to the schools. We dealt with this with the project on Harrison. By the time potential students actually move in, it will be several years down the road. So it's kind of a dynamic issue to look at, versus now versus the potential development horizon. Even if this were to get going today, you're not going to have homes built for another 2 to 3 years at a minimum. So
before we continue with any questions, and I have a question of my own, Mr. Kavanaugh, I wanted to make sure that I am dotting I's and crossing T's. I did not read far enough ahead, and I want to ask about the opening of the public hearing and all that.
Right.
Yes.
That actually, we would put that in the record, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem.
Okay, excellent. So we don't need to go through that
No.
process right now?
No.
Okay, excellent. Mr. Norris, any further questions at this time?
No.
Okay, I did have one question. It could be for Mr. Norris or anyone else on staff. The different options here, approval of the general plan amendment, but deny the proposed change of zone. Can someone please articulate the benefits of choosing that path as opposed to doing both at this time? Or why that was an option that was presented?
Well, I think the second option kind of dovetails into what Councilman Rush was suggesting, that you might feel more comfortable putting the zoning on the property if you had a development proposal in front of you. So that would be the benefit of approving just the general plan change. Then whoever develops the property would come in and bring a development project, bring the zoning with it, and get those both approved at the same time. That's one approach to doing it. The other approach is to change them both at the same time. Planners like to have general plans and zoning match, so we don't like to leave, a general plan category up here and the zoning category somewhere else. That's just a planner thing. So, but the advantage of doing only the general plan is that lets you then postpone the zone change until you have a project, you know what you're getting, and approve them both at the same time.
Okay, if that option were to be pursued, this would bring Mr. Van Leeuwen to where he thought that he was at initially.
Well, it would bring him a higher density, but not as high as what the county had approved. So it'd be one category lower than what the county had approved.
But not the zone, okay,
Right.
not the change of zone.
Yeah, if we go back to,
Right. Okay, any further?
Yes, I do have
Yeah.
another question. Eric, when was this, in my understanding, is previously approved, right, before incorporation? When was it approved by the county? When was the general plan amendment adopted?
it was a couple weeks before incorporation, so maybe 10 days before incorporation.
Okay. And the second question, the proposed zoning recommendation, I'm assuming staff is satisfied with, is R3.
Yes.
That would allow one family, two family, and multifamily type dwellings?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yep, Mr. Plott?
In the R3 zoning, what's the units per acre, the range of, so I
Well-
know there's a flexibility, it's not just a number, but there's a range of number.
Well, the R3 zoning would go back to the general plan category for density. So if you approve the 5.1 to 8, then the R3 zoning would allow that many units.
Mr. Richard?
If this were to be approved, is there anything stopping or restricting other than it coming back to us for another step increase? So for instance, if we improve it now, 5-10 years down the road, they can come back and ask for another step increase, right?
They
In the
certainly
general
could,
plan.
and it would go through the same process.
And that's kind of my concern, because I think that it's hard to make a two-step increase going from medium density to high density. It's a lot easier to go from medium density to medium high density. And then 5-10 years down the road, if that's where we're at, and then a developer comes in and says, oh, well, we're at medium high density, let's just step it up to high density.
That'd be discretionary, right?
Yeah, completely discretionary, but I think it sets a precedence here on what happens with that. So that's one of my concerns, without having a development plan in place of saying this is what we want to do. So that's,
You could have a developer come in with a really cool project at that higher density, and that might make the difference.
exactly, yeah.
Could you put the general plan overview back up? Sorry, my agenda just crashed. It's kind of blocked out. The D.R. Horton project, Copper Sky or Canyon, or whatever it is, that's the equivalent density, correct? I know it's kind of blocked by the label there, but, so that's the exact density that this is? We have a sidebar. Oh, wait, no worries.
I'm sorry.
You ready?
Yes, apologize.
The D.R. Horton development, which also was approved for Van Dale and sold to D.R. Horton under the county,
Right.
that's the
Copper Sky,
same color, correct?
That's what he's asking for, right? They're in that 5 to 8 category. Yeah, right now, it's a little hard to tell with the colors, but he has basically our typical single-family residential general plan, exactly the same as the neighborhoods on the north side of Citrus.
Thank you.
Mr. Plott, did you have a question? Was there any further context that staff would like to add related to this?
Well, in our sidebar, the city manager was just asking me to remind you that, getting back to the options, if the council decides to only approve the general plan amendment, then basically Mr. Van Loon is more or less getting back to where he was with the county approval. They did not process a zone change when they approved the general plan change in 2010. So if we're trying to get Mr. Van Loon more or less back to where he was in 2010, the second option gets in there, because at that time he did not get his zone change.
Any further questions at this time?
I have a question.
Yeah.
Maybe it's my ignorance, but what good does a general plan amendment do, increasing it from what it's at currently to 5.1 to 8 if the zoning for residential is not there?
Well, it sets the stage for the zoning, and it allows him to market the property to developers with that increased density. And it also just does what everything else on the general plan map does, which is it's a statement of your policy for what you think the future development there ought to be.
Any further questions, discussion?
Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, can I ask Eric a quick question on that
Yes, sir.
one question that Councilmember Rigby, what is the current zoning on that?
Yeah, currently he has, go back here, he has an ag zoning on it. So he's the green color here.
Okay. The only issue, Councilmember Rigby, that we have, if you just approve the general plan, you're basically approving a general plan amendment that's inconsistent with the zoning, and state law doesn't really look favorable to have inconsistencies with your general plan and zoning. So if you just approve the general plan only, you would have an inconsistency.
Can you expand upon what the consequences are with that?
Well, typically, when you have an inconsistency, state law requires that they both be consistent.
Okay.
And we would be operating basically in non-compliant with state law with respect to that.
How does that match up with, never mind. Okay, thank you.
Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, I would just also acknowledge that there was a letter received by Brandon Johnson yesterday that we all have, so
Yes.
that's in the record.
Any further comments, discussion?
Nope.
Okay, I would like to, I'll entertain a motion. Anybody?
I'd like to get more information on the school district, on the specific school districts and how it impacts, more information. I mean, I do appreciate Mr. Van Leeuwen coming down lower in density. I think it's a kind of a give and take, but I think that information's important to have. Personally, that's just my take on it. I think that's to me, it's a critical component to this, because that, around that area are schools and districts, so, or, yes, our schools around that area.
Would you,
So I'll make a motion to continue for 2 weeks till after the schools meeting, and then we can bring that information back. Do we have a member from staff that's attending that as well? Okay. So Councilmember Rigby and our city manager will be in attendance, sir.
I'll second that motion.
okay, we have a first and a second to continue this item until,
And I'm sorry, just to clarify, that would be leaving the public hearing open, Mr. Kavanaugh?
Yes.
And continuing
If
till...
that's what you wish.
Yes, that's what I would recommend, and continue until Wednesday, May 24th.
to Wednesday, May 24th. Okay, so we have a first and a second.
Councilmember Plott,
Yes.
Councilmember Rigby,
Aye.
Councilmember Rush,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Lorimer.
Aye.
Motion passes 4-0.
Okay, so this item's been continued until our next council meeting, and will remain open until that time. Item 7.2, project number PLN 17-20001, specific plan amendment to chapters 2 and 4 of the Goodman Commerce Center specific plan to require a conditional use permit of indoor amusement / entertainment facility uses and to modify the standards for a freeway sign. And this is submitted by Eric Norris, Planning Director. Now, at this point, Mr. Norris.
Thank you, sir. Yeah, basically, this is part of a continuing process that we've been engaging with the Goodman folks on for some time since the approval of their specific plan to find areas in there that need to get tweaked and fixed a little bit. There are two items that we're talking about tonight. The first one we'll talk about is actually in Chapter 4, and that deals with the standards that govern the freeway sign that can get built along the I-15 in that project. The second is an amendment, very minor thing, but something that came to light a few months ago that we both agreed needed to get fixed. So, talk about the freeway sign first. The Goodman Center specific plan allows one freeway sign along the I-15, and if you've been out there, you can see where it's going to go. So I've pointed that out here. It's adjacent to the current Amazon building, and if you drive by, you'll see a red tower. And if you've ever wondered what that is, that's where the sign is going to go. It'll actually be a little bit taller than that, but that's where the sign's going to go. So the issue that came up is when the specific plan was written, the sign on the freeway was envisioned to look like this. It was an 800 square foot sign held aloft on two pillars, about 75 feet tall. And you can see down here the little person for scale. So if you go back here again, you'll see that, well, there's not two pillars, there's one, and this is actually proposed to go inside a different looking sign. So what they want to do now is they want to take that whole sign face and extend it all the way down to the ground. So that red pillar is going to go up into the sign about like so. What happens then is the sign becomes twice as big. So what the applicant has asked and staff and your planning commission recommended was to allow the sign to be roughly twice as large. It would go from 800 square feet to a maximum of 1,500 square feet. So that's a change on the freeway sign. Then there's some just text changes in the document that address those changes in sizes. The other change here, when this sign was drawn, it envisioned having 4 tenants. So we put in the specific plan, you can have 4 tenants on the sign. This one, as you can see, has more than 4 tenants, so the proposal is to remove that limit. And we'll work with the applicant to make sure that they're all large enough to be legible. We're not going to, I don't think that Mr. Mace is going to put 20 tenants on the sign and make them all too small to see. The other issue is something that came to light recently when the city and Goodman was approached with a proposal to put a dance hall type facility in one of their business park buildings that's already constructed there along Belgrave. And we looked in the plan and we noticed, and I don't think anybody else had caught this, that kind of use in the business park area is currently permitted, which means we couldn't put any parameters on that use if it came in, hours of operation or anything. And given that the business park is the closest area in the plan to the residential area south of Belgrave, we didn't want to have people leaving a dance hall at 1 o'clock in the morning and going out onto Belgrave and making noise and so on. So the proposal is to not disallow that, but to make it a conditional use. So you see here the P for permitted is struck out, and that would change to a C for conditional, which means that if a dance hall or some other kind of use like that wanted to go into the business park area, they would go to the planning commission for a conditional use permit, and the commission would have the opportunity to put limits on that, hours of operation, numbers of people, numbers of events, and so on. So the commission looked at this. They voted unanimously to recommend both of those changes. And that concludes my presentation. I'll be happy to answer any questions. Ward Mace from Goodman is here if you have any specific questions for him.
Okay, at this time, I'd like to open the public hearing. All right. Mr. Mace, please. Good evening, sir.
Nice to see you.
Good to see you.
Did you have a specific question?
I didn't know if you had anything that you would like to add, or?
Actually, no.
Okay.
My director, Eric Norris, he does a fabulous job of presenting. I guess the only thing, one thing I would add, and that is that really what we've discovered is that the pylon sign is becoming a huge driver for the retail tenants. And many of the retail tenants that we're talking to right now are all asking for space on the pylon sign. And so this is a sort of the reaction to that, was a discussion on how do we get them on the pylon sign.
Okay, excellent. Thank you.
I'm just curious on how staff got you to agree to accept additional review and scrutiny, but I'll leave that to the sausage-making process, so. Yeah. I would move approval unless there's any other questions.
I have a couple of questions, just real quick. Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. On, well, I guess for both staff, the sign that's existing there, the Goodman sign fence, does that not qualify as a sign then?
It does. That's a different sign type in the specific
Okay.
plan that's already, so they've already used that sign. This is the other freeway sign.
Okay. So they're allowed two then?
There'll be two.
Two?
The one there now called the kinetic sign, and this one.
And this is inside the fence of, along the freeway there, right? Yeah. I personally think this sign looks better than the one on the left. I think it just aesthetically looks better, and especially coming into Eastville, I don't know. I would prefer something to look a little bit better, and I think it just fits the community.
Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, just for the record, before the council does deliberate, we should probably invite anybody from the
That's what I
audience
was
who wants to
about
speak.
ask. Thank you, sir. Mr. Aguilar, has anybody submitted a comment card?
We've received none.
No comment cards. Anybody, this is your chance. Nope. Okay.
I have a quick question. What's the red logo? In the, my eyes are terrible. I can't. What is the red logo in the middle of everything? What company is that? Just curious.
I think those are just examples, right?
Oh, those example.
Yeah.
Oh,
That's our new raw sushi restaurant.
you know what? That's what I thought. Is that wrong? I was like, oh. That's exactly.
Opens next
Let's
month.
see what big companies we can get there to put up on
Not
that
important,
sign.
but I just was. My eyes were bad.
Okay, with no comments from the public, we're going to close the public hearing. Any further questions from the council?
I would second Adam's motion.
Okay, we have a first and a second.
Councilmember Platt?
Yes.
Councilmember Rigby?
Aye.
Councilmember Rush?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Larmore?
Aye.
Motion passes 4-0.
Okay, excellent. We are moving on to item 8, city council business, for which we have no items. Moving on to number 9, city manager report and city staff reports.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor Pro Tem and Council. My only announcement tonight is to congratulate the city and Goodman and the Amazon project for winning the prestigious CC Award this year for community impact. It's the Community Impact Award for Economic Development. We are the only city in California to receive that award, and I believe we are the only city in California for the last 10 years to receive that award. So we did publish a press release about it on the city's website and social media, and I'd like to congratulate all the staff that worked very hard on bringing the Amazon project to fruition, as well as our wonderful community partners, Goodman. Thank you.
Congrats.
Great job.
Congrats, everybody. Any other other staff reports? No, everybody wants to go home early today. Yes. By all means.
Hello, Mayor Pro Tem and members of the council. I just wanted to give you a quick update in the community and update. We have a quarterly town hall meeting next Tuesday at 6:30 p.m. here at Rosa Parks Elementary School. We also have the Eastvale Chamber of Commerce after hours mixer from 5:30 to 7 p.m. on May 18th. It'll be at Panera Bread this time. We also have an upcoming CERT training, which is the Community Emergency Response Team. So for those that want to get prepared for an emergency or disaster, it's free of charge to the public. May 19th, 20th, and 21st. It'll be at the JCSD district office off of Harrell. It's all posted on our social media pages and platforms and website. And I just wanted to update the council that we are prepared for our May installation for the military banners, and I'm happy to report that we will have pretty much all of Archibald completely filled with military banners of service men and women. I'm trying to get them installed before Armed Forces Day on May 20th. Unfortunately, we may be a little bit delayed with that, but it'll be soon after, probably the week of the 22nd. So that's all I have for PIO.
That's excellent, thank you. Any
Mayor Pro Tem and council members, I do have one actually rather large announcement as well for tonight. I believe you all got the email today from the governor's office. The announcement was that he will be coming to the area at Jurupa, City of Jurupa Valley City Hall on Friday to personally sign SB 130, which is the VLF bill.
It's huge.
Yes.
Why not Eastville?
Because he doesn't like us.
No problem with that.
You know, I would have gladly welcomed him to our humble abode at City Hall. We weren't asked, so maybe it's too little to accommodate him. I don't know, but
So for those of you in the audience, VLF, vehicle licensing fees, this is something that every other city, with the exception of 4 here in Riverside County, receives, and we have not received that since our incorporation. This is being righted, and that will be done this Friday in Jurupa Valley at their city hall. This is a long time coming, and well, it means a great deal for our city. So congratulations to everybody for, well, weathering this and winning in the end. Yes. So. All right, any further comments? Okay, council communications. Councilmember Rush.
Thank you. Just 2 quick things, I think, hopefully. Well, 3. I was able to attend the One Legacy 5K run walk last weekend. It was a bit of a bear getting all my 3 kids up and in Fullerton by 7 a.m., but it was a humbling event. There was a lot of kids there who had, young kids, who had donated organs to siblings and family members. My middle child walked around, and they had kind of a garden of all the folks who had passed away and donated, and there was a lot of kids there. So that was an interesting feat for her. So I got to meet Rod Carew. That was kind of cool, and David Eckstein. So it was a good event, so I appreciate the opportunity to attend there. The vote for the TUMP Nexus was postponed from last Monday, the 1st. We effectively lost our quorum because there was an item before that took much longer, so that won't be back up until, there will be no executive board action until at least June on the TUMP, so that's kind of in hiatus at this point. The item before that was quite interesting and drew a lot of public scrutiny. It's the community choice aggregation. It's a bit wonky. I didn't support the item, but Ms. Nissen and I have what I'm assuming is a very long and detailed meeting the 30th or 31st before our joint meeting with JCSD to meet with WRCOG staff. It basically would allow cities to form their own JPA and detach themselves from Edison. So lot of things going on there. A lot of folks were very upset that I guess this has happened elsewhere in the state and then failed miserably. So I need to learn more about it before it can even become viable. But what happened last week was they just released it to the cities to then consider. So it'd be a city by city opt-in or opt-out process, and staff is going around with all the cities educating them. So we basically have our own little utility JPA, for better or worse. And then the contractor for the I-15 project, corridor project, was approved, and the financial package was approved today. So environmental documents are being finalized, and construction is hopefully going to be starting here pretty soon, now that the 91 is finished. So that'll be from the 60 freeway all the way down to Cajalco, both sides, north and south, on the 15. So that was several $100 million of funding that was approved today.
Wow.
And that's all I have.
It's huge. Councilmember Rigby.
Thank you. Just two quick things. One is just on the award that city manager was sharing. That's, I think we look at those awards and we think, oh, great, you know, good job, City of Eastville. But those are huge, especially in a developing community like us and our trying to continue our economic development. We have a developer here, but developers look at that stuff. They look at what the city's doing as a whole. So for us to receive those awards, it's a very good job on the city staff. So, I mean, I just want to congratulate specifically the staff and all their hard work in working with us as a council, but also working with the developers and making sure these projects come through and are as good as they are. So, again, great job. The second thing is I had the opportunity to, I know, and Mayor Pro Tem may hit upon this, but had the opportunity to participate in the SCAG conference last weekend. One of the things that I really got out of that was that they talked a lot about data. Hate to go back about the public comment that was made, but they talked a lot about cities providing data to their residents, crime statistics, as well as just other data that the city's able to do, and they talked about streamlining that. So I think with us working on what we can with the crime statistics is the start of the city providing more data to our residents and making it more accessible. So I look forward to that.
Thank you. Councilmember Platt.
Yeah, two items. RTA, we actually our last meeting, Uber came down to meet with us and discuss about first and last rides to RTA, and some of the RTA is trying to do is to try to connect those first and last rides using via Uber, and kind of making some type of collaboration effort. It is coming with some issues because there are some ADA compliances and other issues with that, because Uber cars are not necessarily compliant. So we're working on that, and I'll just keep staff and city council updated as far as how that works out and how that'll impact our city as far as getting those first and last rides. Want to touch on Brian Nichols' comment on Peach Blossom, and you know, one of the things that kind of hits home for me a little bit. There's a very familiar street where I grew up on close to this in Chino. It's on Cypress, between Riverside and Walnut, and it's kind of similar. It's a main street, and it's residential. For years, trash cans would be knocked over, animals would be killed, people almost hit by cars, cars getting hit, just parked cars. And the city of Chino had done nothing about it for the 25 years 30 years since I grew up there. About 8 or 9 years ago, it took a boy to get killed on that street, and where then they took all their streets, San Antonio, other streets that were not quite arterial streets, but they were streets that cut right through residential homes, and there was people were speeding, and it took that to them to put, in this case they did electronic radar signs and kind of pictures of kids and slow down at, I think it was 25 miles. This street is actually, in my opinion, probably a little more dangerous because it's not a straight through street, it's a curve. In that sense, you don't see ahead of you, things kind of pop out. That stop sign he's talking about in the middle of that area, it comes out of nowhere, and people do fly down that street. I've been down that street many times. I was there back in October when he talked about a dog being killed. I know whose dog that was killed by it, right? And that happens. But my direction to staff on this, I think we need to really take a look at that. Streets that are like that even as well. It's just a poorly designed street in that neighborhood. And again, it's a perpendicular main street. You have Scholar to 65th, and people do. They avoid police officers. They go through that street. They race. They fly down that street. I really think we need to really look at this and hopefully have a report in 2 weeks at our next meeting and discuss hopefully what things we can do to kind of help change that situation there, because it's going to take someone getting killed, and it has almost happened there. So just my comment, and we'd love to get a report next council meeting on that. Thank you. And congratulations also on your guys' award. So very awesome. Great job.
That's huge. Okay, thank you, sir. All right, also, brief comments. Western Riverside County Regional Conservation Agency, or RCA, had a meeting take place on May 1st, and it was a relatively quick meeting, a couple of very sort of wonky things. But breaking it down, one of the things that we voted on was a streamlining effort, where staff changed the order of certain steps that need to be taken on projects, and the order in which that is met, so it will help the streamlining process for new projects coming forward. That passed unanimously. Also, the budget passed while at the meeting. That was a little bit more contentious. It came down to a 12-10 vote, 12 in favor. And the item of contention was a position that they were seeking to fund, which had been vacant for 6.5 years, and that is the Director of Acquisition, but there was no description as to the qualifications necessary or the process of hiring. So there were some questions about that, but RCA completed that, and that was on the 1st. It was great. I think every council member here made it to the SCAG General Assembly, which took place last week, and it's 191 cities, 6 counties, a transportation planning organization, and this is the General Assembly where everybody came together under one roof. And it was great to have fellow council members there. There was a lot of great information which was distributed, including the talk that Councilmember Rigby mentioned about transparency. And it's not just transparent. Transparency is always a good thing. It's not having data out there just for the purpose of data being out there. And there are times, of course, when data, bad things can be done with data too. And if it affects privacy, there are times where that data should not be shared, and the speaker covered that. But in general, it was a good presentation, and it'll be interesting when we have further discussion on this at a future council meeting. So coming up, I had one more thing, but actually it was mentioned already. This Friday coming up, Governor's going to be over here in Harupa Valley. It would be great if you all can come out and attend. It's a momentous occasion, a milestone for our city, and it's been a long time coming, and congratulate everybody who put in effort getting us to this point. So that concludes my report, and with that, it also concludes this meeting. Our next meeting of the Eastvale City Council will be on May 24th at 6:30 p.m. We are continuing the meeting until then, is that correct, Mr. Kavanaugh?
Yes.
Okay, we are continuing the meeting until that time.
Well, actually, we're continuing the public hearing.
The
at
public
one item,
hearing, but we are adjourning the meeting.
Right,
So
absolutely.
thank you.
Public hearings are encapsulated within